Thank you, Victoria, so much. I can't see you, so hopefully you guys can see me. As Victoria said, I am Ellen Williams. I am the Community Outreach Manager for CASA. Basically what that means is I go out to the community and I train and teach and educate about domestic violence and the prevalence in our community, and of course the resources that CASA provides for Pinellas County. I start every presentation with a comment about triggering content. I know with what you do, you probably hear a lot of sensitive material, but we are very much about self-care here at CASA. So if there's anything that is triggering or upsetting to you, we do ask that you, turn off your computer for a minute, get up and walk around, whatever it is that you need to do to take care of you. So with any presentation, I always start out with what is domestic violence. A lot of people still, as much as I go out into the community, still have kind of a misconception of what domestic violence is. They think it's all physical, which is the legal definition for domestic violence. It is what the legal system recognizes it as. It is what law enforcement recognizes it is, which is any assault, battery, sexual assault, sexual battery, kidnapping, or false imprisonment that obviously results in physical injury or death of one family member or household member. So that is, again, focusing on the physical part of domestic violence. But what CASA recognizes is what the United Nations recognizes, which is the social definition, which is a pattern of abusive behavior. It's any relationship that's used by one partner to gain power and control over another intimate partner. Physical, sexual, emotional, economic abuse, psychological abuse. It's
Ellen,
basically, yes.
sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know, if you're screen sharing, we're looking at you and not your screen that you are sharing.
Oh, I am screen sharing. I apologize, guys. Hold on. I am screen sharing, so I don't know. Maybe this is what no? Hold on, guys. So sorry about that. You're probably like, what is she talking about?
There we go. We're looking at it now.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, guys.
You're okay.
Hold on. I had it incorrectly on here. So I'm used to doing it on a different computer. So that's why I am kind of having issues here, and I apologize for that.
That's okay. I think if you just go
There we
over to the
go.
slide buttons, you
Can
should be
you
able.
see that now?
Perfect.
All righty. So we've gone through that. Here again, who I am and what I do. I went over the legal definition. I went over the social definition. And now I'm talking about what those terms mean when we do talk about what CASA recognizes as domestic violence. Obviously, intimate partner violence, family violence, household violence, child abuse, elder abuse, stalking and cyber stalking, and dating violence. Even though dating violence actually falls under a different statute, we do recognize that as a form of domestic violence and do outreach and programs for survivors of dating violence as well. Since it is January is Stalking Awareness Month, I thought I'd talk just a minute about stalking. Stalking is, of course, a conduct directed at a specific person that would cause reasonable person to feel fear. It can occur in person, but as I'm sure many of you know, we have an epidemic of online or cyber stalking, as they call it, that we deal with pretty much a lot, especially with certain generation, younger generation. Stalking is a form of emotional abuse, but it is often the key to seeing that the abuse will escalate. Many times with stalking, we see that it escalates into something violent if it isn't, as they say, nipped in the bud. Hold on one second, apologize. 19.3 million women and 5.1 million men in the United States have been stalked in their lifetime. 60.8% of, female stalking victims and 43.5% men reported being stalked by a current or a former intimate partner. Common stalking behaviors, repeated phone calls, voicemails, emails, text messages, monitoring a victim's phone activity or their computer use, driving by their work, their home, their school, showing up different places where the victim, the survivor goes, posting information or spreading rumors about that victim on social media or in public places, vandalizing or destroying someone's property, following the victim, whether it's in person or what we have here a lot at CASA is GPS, whether it's on somebody's phone, in some cases in somebody's car, hacking social media accounts to monitor a victim, committing identity theft, actually taking out accounts, whether it be checking accounts or credit card accounts, in the survivor's name and taking money from their accounts. And then, of course, threatening to hurt or kill the victim or their family or their friends, and in a lot of cases, even their pets. In the US, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men report having experienced severe physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. And 1 in 10 teens report experiencing physical violence from a partner in the past year alone. In the LGBTQIA plus community, 43.8% of lesbian women and 61.1% of bisexual women have experienced violence by an intimate partner. 26% of gay men, 37.3% of bisexual men have experienced violence by an intimate partner. And transgender individuals, unfortunately, have a much higher percentage. In fact, because it goes so unreported, we don't have a lot of accurate numbers, but they do suffer at a much greater percentage than heterosexuals and members of the LGBTQ community. 7 in 10 survivors report that their abuse has also been targeted to their pets, threatening to hurt a pet or kill a pet. 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year. And up to 90% were actual eyewitnesses to the violence. Okay. Sorry, guys, I don't know why it's not letting me do this again. There we go. Pinellas County ranks 5th out of 67 counties in the state of Florida for the most domestic violence incidences. In Pinellas County, domestic violence happens more than aggravated assault, vehicle theft, robbery, rape, and murder combined. The last stats that we were able to get reported that there were 6,111 domestic violence offenses that were reported in 2020. And I focus on the word reported because we know that that number's probably doubled. Most domestic violence incidences go unreported because of the stigma and, of course, because of the fear. Something you probably know, domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness in mothers and children. And who can domestic violence happen to? Who can be the abuser? Anyone. Domestic violence happens across all religions, races, ethnicities, genders, ages, abilities, sexual orientations, socioeconomic and educational levels. And that's something when I go out into the community, I'm still kind of always shocked at how many people think that it is a certain socioeconomic group or a certain race or a certain education level. Domestic violence is across the board. It really could happen to anyone. DV can happen between current and former intimate partners, but it also includes other family and household relationships. Something that we see a lot of here in the state of Florida is elder abuse, whether it's by their children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews. We do see quite a bit of elder abuse here in the state of Florida, especially. So bottom line, domestic violence is about power and control. It's a feeling of superiority and the only way that an abuser can do that is by constantly making the victim feel inferior until they believe it. Domestic violence is not an anger or a substance use problem. Both those things can catapult it, it can encourage it, but it is not the reason why domestic violence happens. So what does power and control look like? This is something we use actually in all domestic violence or domestic abuse centers. It's called our power and control wheel, and it just kind of gives like the physical, the sexual violence, and all the ways that power and control is used by an abuser. I'll cover just a few of them. There's a lot of information here, but as you can see in the bold, there's intimidation. You know, basically an abuser giving a look or abusing pets, as we talked about before, just kind of intimidating, keeping control over that person by intimidation. Isolation is a big one. We have survivors that have come in here that haven't seen a family member in years because in whatever case, the abuser has removed them away from family and friends or removed them away from family members, isolating them. Emotional abuse, putting them down, making them feel bad about themselves, making them think that they're crazy, humiliating them, minimizing, denying, and blaming. There's that word we've heard a lot of called gaslighting. That's kind of what that falls into. Making someone feel like that's not what I said or that's not what I meant, making them feel like they're crazy, like that didn't happen. Unfortunately, something that abusers use a lot of is the children, whether it's making them feel guilty about the children, especially when you're in a situation where there is a separation or divorce. An abuser can use the children to relay messages of harassment towards the survivor. Economic abuse. 80% of domestic violence survivors are also under economic abuse. Obviously, if you control the purse strings, if you control the money, then it makes it harder for that survivor to leave. A lot of times we will have survivors come in, they don't even know how much money they have in their checking account. They have been forced to quit their job, so they have no form of income. So economic abuse is a big one. There's things like gender privilege, which is basically one gender defining the roles, having control over the other one. And then, of course, coercion and threats, threatening to kill themselves, threatening to kill them, threatening to kill a family member. So those are the main ways that a abuser will use power and control over a survivor. Signs of power and control can sound like they want to drop me off and pick me up because they're very protective of me. An abuser saying, I know what's best for you. You can't do that, or you can do this because I know what's best for you. An abuser saying, I make sure my spouse doesn't leave the house without looking a certain way. An abuser saying, I don't want you hanging out with them anymore. I think they're a bad influence on you. And a survivor being scared or frantic because they have to call them back because, you know, my partner will be really mad if they have to call me back more than once. I've actually been on presentations where we've had some people that were watching the presentation say, well, that doesn't really seem all that bad. But the issues with these statements is that when they start looking at power and control, when you're trying to control somebody's behavior, when you're trying to control who somebody is and how they live their lives, that's when it becomes abusive. Signs of power and control can look like forced sexual acts, someone using your pets or your children as leverage, someone controlling your wardrobe, someone having all the passwords to your social media or your email, someone withholding personal documents in the case of maybe if you are an immigrant, feeling pressure to act a certain way, not having your own bank account, as I talked about the economic abuse, not knowing how much money you have, or even being allowed to have any money of your own. So, why do survivors stay? The number one thing that you see there is fear. There's several barriers to leaving, but the number one is fear. In many cases, it's because of the children. As I said, if you have a survivor who has children in the house, and if they are being abused economically, where do I go? I've got children, so they'll stay. That ties into the financial, which kind of all ties in together. Animals. A lot of our survivors are terrified to leave because they're scared of what their abuser is going to do to their dog, to their cat. They also hope that their abuser will change because they love them. Even in all of the chaos and all of the abuse, they are hopeful that this time when he says, I won't do it again, that he or she will not do it again. There's also cultural aspects. The LGBTQIA community, again, the stigma that goes along with that, the fear of being judged, in some cases, the fear of being outed. Undocumented persons. Abusers will very much use well, if you leave, then they're going to send you back to your country, or if you leave, they're going to take your children away from you. Disability, someone who has either a physical or mental disability, abuser will use that against them. Language barriers, of course, seniors, and folks that are in rural areas that don't realize maybe too far away from any services. So those are some of the barriers to leaving. Survivors don't leave, they escape. Leaving an abuser is the most dangerous time for a victim to leave. The loss of power and control triggers lethal action. Once they start losing control, once they start losing the power of that survivor, is when things can really get dangerous. In fact, 20% of homicide victims were not the domestic violence victim, that they were family members, friends, neighbors, persons who intervene, law enforcement responders, or even bystanders. Roughly 80% of homeless mothers with children have previously experienced domestic violence. The average survivor will try to leave an abusive relationship up to 7 times before they leave for good. Again, when you are looking at those barriers of fear, if you have children, if you have pets, there's so many reasons, but in many times, because the system is set up more for the abuser than it is the survivor, it is sometimes just easier to go back. Some of the lethality indicators that we use here at CASA. This is kind of a danger assessment that we use when we are speaking with our survivors. Has the physical violence increased in severity or frequency? Has there been access to weapons, especially a gun? Have there been any threats of homicide? Have there been any threats of suicide? Have they ever tried to strangle or choke you? Has there been any sexual abuse? Are they violently and constantly jealous of you? Has stalking started? Has there been use of illegal drugs or alcohol abuse? Have they threatened the children? Have they avoided being arrested for domestic violence before? And why that's important is because something that happens is if they've avoided being arrested, but they kind of have this Superman complex where they've gotten out of it before, so they can take it to the next level. They control most or all of your daily activities, and you believe that they are capable of killing you. Something we do at CASA is we work with the Strangulation Institute in San Diego, California. One of the reasons that we do that is because we are trying to educate not only the public, but also law enforcement and folks in the medical industry, because strangulation is one of the most lethal forms of domestic violence. It's considered the final warning shot. Unconsciousness can occur within seconds and death within minutes. And many times there are no external signs of strangulation. That's why we're trying to educate, especially law enforcement, when they're going out, and to ask the right questions, to look for the right things. The odds of homicide increase 750% for victims who have been previously strangled compared to victims who have never been strangled. So it's really important that we try to educate people about strangulation and its severity. In fact, we had a young lady who came in here a few months ago end of last year, and she had been strangled, and she finally left. She'd been strangled in front of her children, which to her was the last straw. And she came in, and of course she met with an advocate, and we let her talk to who she needed to speak to. She did tell us that she'd been strangled, but there was only a few red marks, and we asked her if she wanted to see somebody, and she said no. After talking for a little bit, she finally said, you know what, maybe I do want to see somebody. And so we happen to have a nurse practitioner here on site, and examined her and said, I really want you to go to the hospital right away. I feel something here that I'm a little worried about. I want you, what needs to be taken a look at. And she did go to the hospital. She had a scan done, and it was a blood clot that was moving up and could have gone into her brain and could have killed her. So because of those type of things, that is why we work with the Strangulation Institution to educate about what to look for when a survivor or a victim has been strangled. Abuse thrives in silence. That's why we talk about it. What we say matters to survivors. Always speak with empathy, speak with compassion, speak with grace. Delete these phrases. I would never let anyone treat me like that. Well, what did you do to bring this on? It must not be that bad, or you wouldn't stay, you would leave already, or just leave. Unless you've been through something like that, it's kind of hard to understand, but after hearing all the barriers and the reasons that survivors don't leave, it's makes more sense as to just delete these phrases out of your brain, out of your mind. How to help someone who's experiencing domestic violence. First and foremost, listen without judgment. Believe them, don't blame them. Empower them the best way you can. Don't force them or pressure them to tell their story. Let them speak as they can, as they want to, what they're comfortable with. Always offer to help them find resources, and offer to help them with a safety plan. Many times survivors will come in and they know what their situation is the best, and they may not be ready to leave, but helping them with a safety plan on what they need to do or should do or can do when the time comes is something you can help with. That's something that we do here at CASA when an advocate meets with a survivor. It is individualized. We have survivors that will call the hotline. We advocates, whether it's in the phone or in person, will conduct a risk assessment. And as I said, safety planning involves how to keep themselves safe, how to keep their children safe, what to bring when they're maybe finally ready to go. So that is one of the number one things that we do when we speak to a survivor on the phone, or if we speak with them here at the Family Justice Center. One of the other things CASA is working towards working with the media, TV stations, news stations, newspapers, all types of media, to call domestic violence what it is. It's domestic violence. And many times you hear in the news, it was murder, suicide, or it was crimes of passion, or lovers quarrel, tough love. The more we call it what it is, the more the stigma will go away. The more that we talk about it, we name it, We're hoping that that will encourage survivors to come forward and get the help that they need. Calling the police. If you see something and you know physical violence is actively occurring, call 911, obviously. But do understand that there's going to be fear that may be associated with calling the police. Some people are scared. They don't want their family to know. You know, many times survivors, nobody knows. It's their hidden secret. They don't want acquaintances to know. They don't want their job to know that they're going through this. They're scared of being discriminated against or not taken seriously. Sometimes calling the police can actually make it worse for the victim. So only call if the violence is happening and let the officer determine probable cause. So I want to talk a little bit about CASA services and what we do here to help survivors. We just received our impact report a couple of weeks ago, so I thought I would add it to the presentation. 2022-2023, CASA provided 75,349 services to survivors in Pinellas County. We had 7,510 calls that were answered through our 24-hour hotline. We served 554 adults and children in our emergency shelter, and we served 1,156 adults and children here at the Family Justice Center. One of our programs that we have obviously is prevention. Peacemakers, some of you may have already heard of Peacemakers. They are a group that goes into, we partner with Pinellas County School Board to put together a curriculum. It's a 5-week curriculum where we go in and we talk to elementary, middle school, and high school students about domestic violence and healthy relationships. And our goal is to stop future survivors and to stop future abusers. We do lessons like how to deal with your emotions, how to recognize when somebody's in danger. It's just really nurturing peace and justice and meeting the kids where they're at, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school. Also adult education, which is what I do, trainings and webinars. We go into many companies and I talk to attorneys and doctors and anybody who wants to hear about domestic violence. We do adult education as well. We have our emergency services, obviously 24-hour hotline. As I said, it is for survivors to call to help with safety planning, to assess the survivor's needs, to see any kind of support that they need. And I also tell people that even if you're not a survivor, make the phone call. Our advocates are here to talk to anybody that is, even if you have questions, if you have a family member, if something is telling you something's going on, that's what the advocates are here for. Make the phone call regardless. Anything that we can do to help, that's what the advocates are here to do. We also have emergency shelter. CASA provides crisis intervention and advocacy for up to 45 days. Our shelters, we provide clothing, we provide personal care items. We have justice advocacy and other services. Something we're very proud of is we have an on-site and an off-site kennel. We have a really nice kennel, actually. It's air conditioned, and we've had dogs and cats and rabbits and you name it. So we're very proud of our kennels. We don't want anything to stop a survivor from leaving, especially thinking that they have to leave a pet behind. So we're very proud of our shelters that we offer here at our emergency shelter. We also have an injunction protection attorney program. We have attorneys here on site at Family Justice Center, but we also have them at the attorney's office to work with survivors that are seeking an injunction for protection for domestic violence, whether it's for stalking, sexual violence. It's a no charge. It's regardless of your income status. We will help you fill out paperwork. We'll answer any questions, and sometimes, especially in the courthouse situation, we're there to put your mind at ease and let you know what your rights are, what your legal rights are. We also offer housing. We have residential advocacy. We have, I'm sorry, this is lousy. We have residential advocacy and non-residential advocacy. In other words, if you are with us and staying on one of our properties, then we have case management, we have youth advocates, and even if you are not at one of our shelters, we offer advocates, justice advocates, and child welfare advocates. Any type of counseling or any kind of programs that you need, we offer for folks that are in our emergency shelter and any of our housing, or those that just need the programs available. Here's the housing. Permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing. Permanent supportive housing, transitional housing is kind of self-explanatory. Rapid rehousing is basically someone may have a place to stay, but they have no way to get there. They have the means to live in an apartment, but they need a down payment. So they have family in a different state or a different city. They need bus fare to get there. That's rapid rehousing, getting them to a safe location. Wanted to mention our new community-based housing programs. Probably many of you are aware of this. We do have new transitional housing in North County. We purchased property in July, and renovations are underway, and we are looking to have survivors move in as early as 2024. And of course, we have a rapid rehousing collaborative with St. Vincent de Paul that helps assist survivors with finding housing options. So those are the two new community-based housing programs that we have in place. The Family Justice Center, you've heard me mention this a few times. You guys are pretty familiar with the Family Justice Center by now, but just in case, in October 2022, we opened the Family Justice Center. It is basically a place that provides support for survivors in one place. It is endorsed by the U.S. Department of Justice, and it is a model that reduces the likelihood of a client being exposed to repetitive incidences, experiencing homelessness, and being murdered. The Family Justice Center offers comprehensive, collaborative, trauma-informed free services like childcare, law enforcement, medical services, mental health services, and legal services. And what I said before on one of the other slides is that the system is set up for the abuser and not the survivor. And that's one of the reasons that we knew the Family Justice Center was something that needed to happen in our county. There's only 47 of them in the country. We're the only one in the state of Florida. We're hoping because we are a life-saving model that other cities will see what we're doing and work on getting a Family Justice Center in their community. Now, if someone comes in, they speak to an advocate right away. If you need to talk to an attorney, we have one on site. If you need to talk to a police officer to file a report, if you need to be examined, need a medical examination, if you need to talk to somebody about childcare, if you want to see what programs we have, it's all right here in one place. So the Family Justice Center, the first year that opened in San Diego, had a 90% drop in domestic violence homicides. So we know that it works. There's definitely a need here. We used to see around 24 people a week. We see almost 60 now. So we know that Unfortunately, the need is there, and we're just grateful that we have Family Justice Center available for Pinellas County. Sorry. There we go. These are some of our community partners. State Attorney's Office, obviously Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, St. Pete Police Department, Baycare, Pinellas County Clerk of the Circuit Court, Juvenile Welfare Board, Office of Attorney of General Injunction Team. And there's more than this, but these are the just some of them that we wanted to mention. These are the folks that agreed to partner with us back in 2021, 2020 when this all started, and have continued to support CASA and the Family Justice Center and our survivors. Something that many of you, I'm sure, have heard of is CASA Marion. It just opened this month. We worked really hard to get it taken care of, and we now do provide free, confidential, trauma-informed services for survivors of domestic violence in Marion County. Right now, the services that we are providing is an emergency shelter. We have a shelter set up. We have the 24-hour domestic violence hotline set up. We have outreach programs. We have a child welfare advocate on site. And we also have a community engagement manager who is out in Marion County, spreading the word and making sure that the community knows about the fact that CASA is there and that there are programs and services in place for Marion County domestic violence survivors. And now we'll do questions. Victoria, you've been kind of keeping track of them if there are any, is that correct?
I have, but there haven't been any in the chat right now. I think that
Okay,
Zen Boylan might have one.
okay.
Mrs. Zen?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I have a question. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit more in regards to the St. Vincent de Paul collaborative and how that would look like?
Sure, let me go back to. I don't know a whole lot about it, I apologize, but it was a grant that we were awarded. We assist survivors in finding housing options. We provide the financial assistance for moving costs and ongoing case management with the folks that come into St. Vincent de Paul. That are victims of domestic violence. They still have to be, it still has to be a question of domestic violence because that's who we help, but we are partnering with them and the folks that come in that are just domestic violence survivors, and we're working with them on a rapid rehousing program with them. I can find you more information, and I'd be happy to get that from my director of programs and get that to you if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that would be really helpful. Just so I could understand like
What are
I
your
guess the process.
Sure. What are your specific, what is it that what you're just wanting to know how the program works, or specifically who we help, or is there anything?
So I guess who would have the responsibility of what specifically, and then would they originally be a CASA client, and then you guys would be collaborating and then referring directly over to St. Vincent de Paul for them to commence their responsibilities, or like how, I guess kind of more so of like the process and like logistics
Okay,
of it
I
all.
can find that out for you. Yeah, I can find that. I don't want to, I'm pretty sure, I'm like 85 to 90% sure I know how it works, but I don't want to speak out of turn and give you the wrong information. So let me get the details and I will be sure and get that information to you. Victoria, may I email it to you and you pass it along?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I can do that.
Thank
Perfect.
you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course, absolutely. No problem whatsoever.
Does anybody else have any questions?
I apologize if I went too fast. Sometimes I do, because I want to be sure I get everything in. So I apologize if I did that.
I don't
I
think
think
it
I
was
know a
too
lot of you
fast.
have, I recognize actually some of the names and stuff. So I know that this isn't your first time at the rodeo. You know a lot of this information. So I very much appreciate your patience in listening. And hopefully maybe I gave you one little morsel of education that you didn't have or you didn't know. But I'm always open, and I tell any presentation, I'm always open to any questions. If you even think of something later on, let Victoria know, and she'd be happy to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have if you think about them at a later time. Our goal is to make sure you have as much information as you have to help survivors. So I'm happy to do that at any time.
Thank you. We did also get another question in the chat.
Oh,
Does
sure.
does CASA take clothing donations that they give out and do not sell?
We take new clothing for the shelter. And then we take any lightly used clothing we sell in the shelter. I mean, we sell in the store, in the thrift store. 100% of our proceeds from the thrift store do go to our survivors. It doesn't pay an electric bill, doesn't pay salary. It's 100%. But we do give new things to our survivors, and whether it be the shelter, we also in some cases, depending on a case-by-case situation, we will give them coupons, we'll give them credit vouchers, and they can go and get items either for themselves or for their children. So there's a lot of different ways that we pass along clothing, but we accept donations of new clothing to shelter and used clothing to the thrift. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that is good to know.
Yeah,
Are there any other questions for Ellen?
I'm just going to ask one more thing. If you would, you see the little QR code there. If you have time, I know everyone's busy, but if you have time, if you wouldn't mind giving me a little bit of feedback on how I did, you're probably going to say she went too fast. I understand. But any other tidbits that you give me, more information maybe for the next time of what you want me to talk about, or maybe add to my presentation. Any kind of feedback, any type of constructive criticism is always welcome and appreciated. So if you have the time to do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this great training, Ellen. It is always greatly appreciated.
Of
This is
course.
so important for the work that all of us do. There are a lot of HLA folks on this call, but there are some other folks from outside of HLA who are, providers out there doing the work as well. And this is just so important for what we're doing. So thank you very much for your partnership and for, I'd say, coming out, but that feels weird because we're on Zoom for being here.
I appreciate you for inviting me. I do love to, I call it preach the gospel of CASA. That's what I like to do. Let people know that we're here and that we're here for survivors. So I very much appreciate the invitation. And as I said, want to reiterate, anyone has any questions, please get it to Victoria, and I'd be happy to answer whatever questions anyone has, any other information.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, you too.